Hi, looks like we still have a few people joining us, so we're just going to give it a couple more minutes. Stand by, and we'll get this started very shortly. Thank you.
And I'm an industry business consultant here at Dassault Systems, and I will be your presenter and host for today's webinar. A few housekeeping items to clear out of the way. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to add them to the chat window. And at the end of today's webinar, we'll have a Q&A. Well, I'll try to get to all of the questions. So if something comes up, please don't hesitate to throw it in, and we'll go ahead and circle back at the end of the webinar. As always, if I'm unable to circle back and tackle all of the questions, I will still want to reach out and personally get you your answers. Today's webinar is really going to be about the differences between the two main versions of DraftSight. Before we really jump into what does that mean, you need to understand the DraftSight portfolio. So from a naming convention, it can be just a bit confusing, but I want to simplify it by saying what type of licensing is it on the left and where did you purchase it from across the top. So if you do purchase it from our partners and it's a desktop application, you're going to see either DraftSight Enterprise or Enterprise Plus. If it's the 3D Experience platform version, it's going to be 3D Experience DraftSight Professional or 3D Experience DraftSight Premium. You can also purchase directly from our website, and if so, it's going to be named DraftSight Professional or DraftSight Premium. Today, we're really going to be talking about DraftSight Enterprise Plus, DraftSight Premium, and 3 Experience DraftSight Premium. This is all the different functionality that's going to be in these compared with the others. Now, there's quite a bit of information out there on the big differences. And really, the point of this webinar is to dive down and dig deep into certain areas that has the potential to impact a lot of different users. I need to touch base on the big areas, so bear with me while I go through a couple of those. But really, we're going to spend quite a bit of quality time reviewing that. So the first big ticket item is going to be batch PDF import. Now, this is also available with DraftSight Enterprise. It's the only one, but again, it's one of the big ticket items, and so we're going to discuss it. So let me jump in and just give you a quick overview of really what we're talking about with PDF import. So the first thing is you're going to find it on the import tab. And when you choose it, you're going to have an option of inserting as a block, or i.e. you're going to do one PDF to import, or you can select batch processing. In addition, you have quite a few different options that you can apply. An example is this: if you want to flatten all the layers to 0, or if you want to use the PDF layers that are embedded in it. When you do pick batch, you're going to be asked for a source folder and a destination folder. Where are the PDFs at, and where do you want the DXFs to be created? And then you do have further options of refining that if you don't want all the PDFs in that directory. Once you hit OK, it's going to go through and it's going to start converting them. And again, if you have a lot of PDF files, this is great because you can do it over lunch, or you can do it at the end of your day, and you can just let it churn through it. Now, I get asked quite a bit on, why would someone need this? Now, obviously, if you are getting a whole bunch of PDFs as, for example, an as-is construction project from a older architect where you're doing some updates to that, you're going to have a PDF package. You might not have the raw CAD file. In addition, if you're on the mechanical side and you print a PDF after every release, and that PDF is what the downstream users like manufacturing are using, if anything happens to those DWGs, and we have all been there, where files either get corrupt, go missing, etc., then the original DWG can be gotten back from that printed PDF. So those are a couple of the use cases that we have. The next big ticket item is the Sheet Set Manager. The Sheet Set Manager allows us to organize quite a few different DWGs and allow us to quickly bounce back and forth between them. We can also edit attributes. We can set up selection sets. So if you're printing, you can control quite a bit of that. So let's take those PDFs that we converted over, and let me show you a quick example of how to create a selection set. So the first thing is we're going to turn on the Selection Set Manager. We're going to go ahead and create a brand new selection set. Now this acts as a separate file. This is so if you have a multi-user environment, you might have multiple people that want to open up the Selection Set Manager and be able to see that same tree. Now for our example, we've just imported these PDFs, and because those are as is, we're going to kind of organize them into kind of, if you will, a tree structure. So I'm going to go ahead and create some subset. And by doing that, we'll go ahead and throw in 3. We can kind of quickly think of these as almost like folders, but allows you to say, okay, if I wanted to print all of, let's say, the architectural drawings in this example, or all the details, or all the structural, that's really kind of what we're doing. And then with a little bit of drag and drop, we're going to take and we're going to organize that. So we started with a PDF package, and now what we've done is we've converted them over to DWGs, and we've organized them in a sheet set, so we have quick access to all of those files. So that's a great example of using the Sheet Set Manager. The next big ticket item is going to be constraints. Constraints allows you to add a whole bunch of intelligence to kind of to your dumb lines and circles, etc. It's used quite a bit for linkages. It's used quite a bit when you have almost like a template drawing where you need to change a couple dimensions and have the geometry update. We have customers that use those parameters to quickly generate hundreds of different size drawings very, very rapidly just by changing a couple of values. So the example I've shown it in other webinars, but it's still kind of a great example. And it's just basically a simple linkage. I've actually got these as organized as blocks, and I've thrown some constraints, relationships in them, and then I put in some dimensions so you can kind of see. And when I drag and drop this around, you can kind of see that those dimensions are giving me updates. It's controlling those coincident and concentric, kind of relationships, and it allows me to kind of quickly in a 2D sense lay out this linkage and get some, fundamental information on for example, that plunger depth. What does it need to be? Each one of these parameters can also be controlled. You can see I've got certain parameters that I can control the names of, add dimensions manually. So that's really kind of what we talk about when we deal with constraints. Our final topic of the day is going to be custom blocks. And this is the topic that I'm planning on doing the deep dive in. A few things that we're going to cover on custom blocks are visibility states, alignments, labels, and masks. There's a lot that can be done that is, I would consider, more advanced than these. I chose these as a great way of showing the difference, but also how to get started and get the most bang for your buck on converting over to custom blocks from regular blocks. So let's go ahead and dive in. First thing you're going to notice is I'm going to bring up design resources. I use this quite a bit. If you don't know where it is, you can right click on the ribbon and you will be able to turn it on. Just a checkbox there. Design resources give you a window into either your local directory or even a server, and the DWGs that are placed in those file folders. So you can actually set it to favorites. You can have multiple favorites, but this is how I would recommend managing block libraries. When you click on a drawing, you can see that you can click into the blocks and you can see an entire list of all the blocks that it contains. You can also see this from a layer perspective. Let's go ahead and open up this block library and show how I'm converting multiple blocks into a single block entity. So as you can see here, we've got a whole bunch of valve blocks. I'm going to go ahead and take and make a copy of these entities so that we can kind of set up a new block over on the left-hand side. For this example, we're just going to call it valve. I'm going to pick the origin to the left of it, and I'll show you why in just a second. We'll just pick everything and say OK. And let's go ahead and create that block. Once a block is created, if you double click on it, you'll go into the edit block mode. I'm going to place a line at 0, 0, which is the insertion point for the block, as a reference. And we're going to delete that later, but this will help us align all of the blocks. There are 3 areas of custom blocks that we need to concern ourselves with. So if you look up on the ribbon toolbar, you'll see elements, activities, and element sets. Elements allow us to place the grip points that do something, and the activities are then what is going to be done. And the element sets are a little bit more advanced, and we're not going to cover them in today's webinar. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the alignment element. The alignment element allows our block to snap to the entities in the drawing and realign themselves. There's 2 options, parallel and perpendicular. By default, it's parallel. The second thing that we're going to add is the visibility element. The visibility element allows us to create multiple versions of this block and switch between them. Once you've added the visibility element, you'll see that the display state area of the ribbon becomes enabled. There's a couple different options. There's a drop-down list showing you the active display state. There are 3 icons: show everything, turn on, or turn off that we'll be using. So let's go ahead and open visibility states, and we're just going to do 4 blocks in this example. So I'll quickly create 3 more visibility states and rename the original one. This will give us a few options to play with. Since I'm not going to do the ball or butterfly valve, I'm just going to go ahead and delete that geometry right now. The last visibility state was gate closed. So now we're going to select the entities that we don't want to show in that and go ahead and click on the hide icon. And then we're going to rinse and repeat this for the other 3 visibility states. So let's do the gate. We only need to see the actual valve itself. So we're going to select all the other entities and go ahead and hide. And then let's switch over to general closed. Now, be careful on what you select. Here I selected the alignment element, and if I want to hide that, then this one block wouldn't be able to align itself. So we have to be careful on what we're choosing. And the last one, we're going to go ahead and just do general, and let's go ahead and hide all of the other elements. And there we go. Now, I created that line at 0, 0. So the next step is we're going to align all of our blocks on top of each other. If this was done earlier, before we created the visibility states, you can see the complexity of trying to select the elements that you needed to hide or show per visibility state. So by doing this over on the side, it makes it super simple, and then we can just go ahead and move them all on top of each other. And that makes it a little bit simpler to manage, if you will. The last step that we're going to do is we're going to delete that helper line that we created, and then we're going to go ahead and close and save this block. Now that the block has been created, we're going to go ahead and generate a couple flow lines so we can do some testing on this block. When I select it, you will see that there's a couple grip points. There's our visibility states that we have listed, and then the one at the origin would be our alignment. So if I choose alignment, I'm going to turn off ortho, and if I drag this block around, you'll notice that it will snap to the elements. Not only will it snap to the elements, but let me go ahead and change the block so you can see a specific side. When you hover your mouse over, you can flip the block direction at the same time. Next thing we're going to look at is, if you'll notice, when I switch over the block, it's not hiding the line behind it. So we're going to go ahead and add a mask to our block. First thing we're going to do is switch over to the visibility state that needs them, and then we're going to use the mask command. With the mask command, you can select a pre-created polyline, or you can create your own on the fly. We're going to go ahead and create our own. And the last step we're going to do is move it to the bottom of the stack. This is important. That way anything in the block is on top of it, and then the mask is on the very bottom. So here, let's go ahead and rinse and repeat this for the other symbol that needs a mask. To show you exactly what a mask does, I'm also just going to create a dummy one. And by default, their edges, or what they call frames, are shown. So you can see this triangle that I make is a mask. If I move it around, it's going to hide what's behind it. But the border is on. To turn those off, you can go type in mask, and you'll see the frame option. And so let's go ahead and use the frame option. And we're going to say, no, we do not want to display them. And you can see the mask is still there, but with just out any borders. So let's go ahead and delete that. We don't need it in our block. Close, save, and let's see what happens. Now, because this block was inserted prior to the polyline, we need to kind of bring it to the top. Again, the stack is important. But now that it is, you can see that that mask is doing its job. I don't need to break that line, and it makes it much simpler to add the blocks. The last thing that we're going to do to this block is we're going to add a label. And I like this because there is an action that we can add to this label that makes it easy to have a whole bunch of blocks that are the same but are slightly different. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just drop in our label. Once we have the label created, we need to go and create a point element because there is no element for move. So we're just going to create a basic point, go ahead and turn it on, and then we're going to create a move activity. And so we select the element, and then we select the label as a selection set. And then let's go ahead and close and save the block and test this out. So if I was to have a kind of a condition where I had multiple blocks in close proximity to each other, so I'm going to go ahead and create this by copying the block and just pushing it, putting them in on this corner. This move activity in the custom block allows us to kind of push and pull these labels around and kind of unclutter this area, but not have to move or create new blocks or delete the label from the block and add text. It's all self-contained, and if I change that label, it will change in both blocks. All we're doing is repositioning the actual location of the label. We started out by copying 8 of those blocks, but we really just created 4 visibility states. Here I'm going to go ahead and insert a block that I previously created with all 8 of them done, so you can kind of see how a full block would look like. This is going to wrap up the webinar, and I hope you've really enjoyed it and have gotten something out of it and have a new respect for custom blocks. I like to end with the resource side, so there's a good next step for you. Take a couple minutes to talk about the DraftSight community. If you're not on this swim community, I would highly recommend you get on it. It's a great way to ask questions, post to the entire user community. There's quite a few of us that are DraftSight advocates that are on there as well. Another resource is 2dcad.com or DraftSight.com. They have a ton of downloadable content, video content, and then there's our YouTube channel as well. We have specific learning journeys. These are a collection of about 100 videos, and they're short videos that walk you through quite a bit of the functionality that DraftSight has to offer.
This brings us to the question and answer section of our webinar today. So if you've had an opportunity to add questions to chat, thank you. And if you haven't, that's how we're going to be fielding all the Q&A for today. So if you want to take a minute and go ahead and throw your questions in there. And I apologize about the beginning. We're switching over to a Zoom webinar. It's a new format for us, and we're still working out the kinks. So there was a question about the command window at the bottom. And so if you right click on the, this is for Bill Watson, if you right click up on the ribbon, you'll actually see the command window as an option that can be turned on or off, just like I turned on design resources. So if you accidentally turn off your command line or the command prompt, you can turn it on by right clicking on the ribbon to get back to that. There's a question about DraftSight Standard. So DraftSight Standard is a legacy product. In fact, if you're brand new to DraftSight, you don't have the ability to purchase DraftSight Standard. And that would be very similar to the professional or the enterprise versions that I was talking about. So it does not include the custom blocks. So William Johnson asked if there was a recording of this webinar. Yes, we will be posting that up shortly. I will also take down your name, so as soon as I get the link, I can email that directly over to you, William. Bill, would you, if you wouldn't mind, email me directly, and after the Q&A, let me reach out to you and see your screen, and maybe I can help with the command window where you can't find it. And Megan, are you still with us by chance? I believe the link will go out to everybody, but I will double check that and make sure.
Hey everyone, this is Alex Timothy. Yes, I can confirm the recording will be available to everyone who attended here and everyone who registered but was not able to attend. So we will be sending that out.
Thank you, Alex. What version of DraftSight do you need to have? For the custom blocks that I showed, you need the top end. So depending on, again, how you acquire DraftSight, it would either be Enterprise Plus or it would be the premium version. Any other questions? So the great question, is the block editor compatible with the AutoCAD dynamic block system? So if you have blocks that were created in AutoCAD as dynamic blocks, DraftSight will import, and then as soon as you go to edit that dynamic block, it will ask you to convert it into a custom block. So, from an interoperability standpoint, DraftSight is really trying to read all of those in and convert all the intelligence of a dynamic block into a custom block, yes. Jim asked a great question. How do I see the version of DraftSight? If you go to the help about, I believe it will tell you. I don't have my DraftSight open right now. Also, the name of the application itself should give you an indicator. That's the name that's at the very top of the window, middle top, if you will. So you have 2026, x64. Alex, would you happen to know? And is there an easy way to check the exact version of DraftSight?
So I think what you said, Raymond, looking at what the product name is at the very top of the window, because that should, especially for standard professional premium, that'll be right there. But additionally, if you click the little help in the upper right corner, and then I think it's the about link in there, that should tell you additional information regarding what license of DraftSight you have.
Do you want to fill this the upgrade question, Alex?
Yep. So regarding upgrades, today our system does not support converting an existing license from standard to professional. So really the easiest way is to buy a new license. So when your standard license is close to expiration, you can go to our online store, get professional, and we can help you cancel the subscription on your standard license so it does not renew. So you're not basically, you don't have two licenses running at the same time. Okay, Tim, great to hear. Yep. So you have DraftSight Professional. So like Raymond mentioned, if you're interested in the custom blocks, that's in premium, but a lot of the other features are in professional.
So Bill, if you wouldn't mind sending me a direct email, I just threw in my email for 3ds.com, and then I will reach out to you directly after we close the Q&A. And again, that's for Bill Watson. That's a great question on the G-code generator. I will actually take that in advisement. I think that's a great topic to include on a future webinar. If you do have other questions, please, don't hesitate to throw them my way. If you do have questions come up after we close the webinar, I'd be more than happy to hear from anybody. So my email address is there, and please feel free to send me any questions. Last question we're going to take on this webinar is what happens if you have custom blocks in a drawing file and open it in a lower version of DraftSight. So the blocks will be there, they will be visible. You can move them around, you can copy them, but you won't be able to edit them. So they don't have any features as far as those little blip points that you can pull down to change the visibility states or alignments. None of that exists. They're static blocks at that point. But they are still visible and they're still usable in that form. That was a great question, Jim. All right, definitely appreciate it. Like I said, reach out to me if you do have any questions at any time. I'd love to hear from you. And thanks again for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today.